The gentle autumn breeze rustled through downtown Chicago as a well-built man in his mid-30s stepped off the crowded L train. He wore simple dark jeans and a plain navy sweater, a far cry from his usual tailored suits. Running his hand over his shortly trimmed beard, he double-checked the address on his phone and smiled. The gleaming 40-story building ahead housed more than just another corporate office. It was his latest acquisition, though none of its employees knew that yet. As the owner of a successful tech company, he had built his empire from scratch, starting in his garage 10 years ago. But something had always bothered him of the corporate world: the way people treated each other when they thought no one important was watching. That's why he decided to do things differently with his new purchase, this prestigious marketing firm. Rather than walking in with his usual entourage of lawyers and executives, he had a different plan. He would work from the bottom up, experiencing the company culture firsthand as a regular employee. No special treatment, no corner office, just genuine interactions with people who didn't know they were talking to the boss. The security guard barely glanced at his temporary ID badge as he walked through the lobby. In the elevator, he found himself surrounded by sharp suits and designer briefcases, catching snippets of conversation about weekend plans and client meetings. A young woman in an expensive blazer wrinkled her nose slightly when he pressed the button for the 15th floor, where the junior staff worked. The office buzzed with morning energy as he made his way to the HR department. Phones rang, keyboards clicked, and the smell of coffee wafted through the air. He couldn't help but notice how people's eyes skimmed over him, assuming he wasn't worth their attention in his casual clothes. The HR representative, a thin woman with rectangular glasses, handed him a stack of paperwork with barely concealed boredom. "Fill these out," she said, not bothering to look up from her computer. "When you're done, report to floor 15, desk 23. You'll be handling basic administrative tasks until further notice." He took his time filling out the forms, secretly amused at signing his real name on documents that would later prove quite interesting. Around him, the office continued its morning routine, completely unaware that their new owner was sitting right there in their midst. As he walked to his assigned desk, he overheard various conversations. Some people discussed upcoming projects with enthusiasm, while others complained about management in hushed tones. He noticed how certain employees were greeted warmly while others were ignored, how some desks had better equipment while others made do with outdated machines. His simple desk sat in a corner, partially hidden behind a large potted plant. The computer looked like it had seen better days, and the chair squeaked protestingly as he sat down. A sticky note on the monitor listed his login credentials, along with a hastily scribbled list of basic tasks: filing, data entry, and coffee runs. Opening his bottom drawer, he found a dirty coffee mug and some old paperclips. He cleaned the mug in the break room, earning strange looks from people who clearly thought such tasks beneath them. As he waited for his computer to slowly boot up, he observed the office dynamics playing out around him. People clustered in their familiar groups, laughing and chatting, while others sat alone, seemingly invisible to their colleagues. Little did they know, every interaction, every dismissive glance, every whispered comment was being noted by someone who had the power to change everything. But for now, he simply smiled and started his first task of the day: alphabetizing a stack of old client files that nobody else wanted to touch. The first week at the marketing firm opened his eyes to things he never would have seen from an executive's chair. Every morning, he arrived early, taking note of who else showed up before hours to get ahead on their work. He watched as the cleaning staff, mostly elderly immigrants, hurried to finish their tasks before the important people arrived. One morning, while organizing files in the shared storage room, he overheard two senior managers discussing an upcoming project. "Let's get it to that new guy in accounting," one said. "You know, the one with the fancy degree." The other replied, "Yeah, better him than someone from, well, you know what I mean." Their meaningful glances and hushed tones said everything they didn't put into words. During lunch breaks, He chose to sit in the corner of the break room, watching the invisible lines that divided people. The senior staff claimed the best tables near the windows, while junior employees huddled around the wobbly table near the microwave. He noticed how some workers ate alone at their desks, too intimidated to join any group. His simple sweaters and quiet demeanor made him practically invisible to most people. The office manager barely looked at him while dropping stacks of papers on his desk. "File these by end of day," she'd say, already walking away. He didn't mind. It gave him more chances to observe how things really worked. One particular Tuesday, he was preparing slides for a client meeting, something well within his actual expertise. A group of mid-level managers walked past, laughing about some private joke. One of them stopped, looking surprised to see him working on a presentation. "Oh, honey," she said with fake sweetness, "those slides are for the important client meeting. Why don't you stick to filing? We wouldn't want any mistakes." He simply nodded and continued working, but he noticed how several nearby employees lowered their heads, pretending not to hear. Later, one of them, a quiet woman who'd been with the company for 5 years, told him this was normal. "They do that to anyone they think doesn't fit their image," she explained during a coffee break. "I have 2 master's degrees, but they still ask me to fetch coffee because of how I look." The office had its share of kind people too. The IT guy who helped him with his ancient computer stayed late to explain some shortcuts. A junior copywriter always made extra coffee when she saw his cup was empty. These small gestures stood out against the backdrop of casual discrimination and workplace politics. By Friday afternoon, he had compiled a mental list of everything that needed changing. The outdated computer systems on the lower floors, while executives had top-of-the-line equipment. The way certain employees were interrupted in meetings while others could ramble on for hours. The difference in how security greeted people based on their appearance or position. During a team meeting, he watched as great ideas were ignored because of who suggested them. A brilliant marketing concept from a quiet employee was dismissed, only to be praised minutes later when repeated by one of the popular team members. The original suggester just sighed, clearly used to this treatment. What struck him most was how the prejudice was subtle enough to avoid any official complaints, but strong enough to create a toxic environment. People learned to stay quiet, to accept their place, to not rock the boat. Some of the most talented employees he'd observed were stuck in entry-level positions, while less qualified but more suitable candidates got promoted. As he packed up his desk that Friday evening, he thought about all the companies across the country where similar scenes played out every day. But here, in this building, he had the power to change things. The question wasn't if he would reveal himself, but when, and how to make the biggest impact when he did. The morning of the big client meeting started like any other. The office buzzed with nervous energy as everyone prepared to impress one of their biggest potential clients. He arrived early, as usual, carefully reviewing the presentation materials he'd helped prepare, even though his name wasn't on any of them. The conference room on the 30th floor had floor-to-ceiling windows offering breathtaking views of Chicago's skyline. As junior staff members scurried around setting up refreshments and arranging papers, he quietly worked on connecting the projector and testing the presentation slides one last time. The head of regional operations swept in, her designer heels clicking against the hardwood floor. She was talking loudly on her phone, barely acknowledging the people around her. Yes, everything's perfect for the meeting," she said, waving her hand dismissively at a young employee who tried to get her attention about a minor issue with the catering. He was adjusting the projector settings when it happened. Someone had spilled coffee near the conference room entrance, leaving a small brown puddle on the polished floor. The regional head noticed it, and her face twisted with anger. She snapped her fingers loudly, pointing directly at him. "Hey, you," she called out, her voice sharp and commanding. "Stop messing with that equipment before you break something expensive. There's a spill here that needs cleaning up immediately." The room fell silent. Everyone stopped what they were doing to watch. Actually, He began calmly, "I'm here to help with the presentation." She cut him off with a laugh that made several people wince. "Listen, I don't have time for this. I don't know why they sent you up for maintenance, but the coffee needs to be cleaned up before our clients arrive. The cleaning supplies are in the closet down the hall." He noticed how some employees looked away uncomfortably, while others smirked behind their hands. The quiet woman from accounting who'd been kind to him looked like she wanted to speak up but remained silent, fear evident in her eyes. "Ma'am," he tried again, his voice steady despite the tension in the room. "I've been working on the market analysis section of the presentation." "Excuse me?" She interrupted again, her voice rising. "I don't know what gave you the idea that you'd be participating in this meeting, but clearly there's been some confusion. We have qualified people handling the presentation. Now, either clean up that spill, or I'll have to call security to escort you out." The clients could arrive any minute. He could see people through the glass walls, gathering in the hallway, pretending not to watch the scene unfolding inside. The regional head stood there, hand on her hip, phone still clutched in her other hand, waiting for him to obey her command. Instead of arguing further, he walked calmly to his briefcase in the corner of the room. The regional head smiled triumphantly, assuming he was leaving. But instead of heading for the door, he pulled out a folder and his company ID, his real one. Several people gasped as they recognized the distinctive gold trim of an executive-level badge from the parent company. The regional head's phone slipped from her hand, clattering on the conference table as he quietly placed his ID and ownership documents on the table. "I think," he said softly, though his voice carried in the dead silence of the room, "we need to have a different kind of meeting today." He turned to address everyone present. "And I believe it's time we discuss some major changes in how this office is run." The look on the regional head's face shifted from confusion to horror as realization dawned. The very person she just tried to humiliate wasn't a maintenance worker at all. He was her boss's boss. The owner of not just this office, but the entire company. In the days following the conference room incident, the atmosphere in the office grew increasingly tense. The regional head had taken an unexpected personal day, leaving her team scrambling to handle her responsibilities. Meanwhile, he continued his quiet observations, but now people watched him with a mix of fear, respect, and curiosity. During his morning coffee run, which he still did despite knowing glances from others, he overheard whispered conversations. "Did you hear what happened? I can't believe we treated the owner like that. Do you think we'll all get fired?" He noticed how some of the previously arrogant managers now scrambled to appear helpful, while others avoided eye contact entirely. He spent his time gathering evidence of the systemic issues he'd witnessed. In meetings, he carefully noted how the same senior staff who had dismissed his ideas now leaned forward eagerly when he spoke. The transformation in their behavior only proved his point about the deeply rooted problems in the company culture. The quiet woman from accounting stopped by his desk one afternoon, nervously playing with her pen. "I just wanted to say," she began hesitantly, "some of us have been here for years, trying our best to spite." She trailed off, but he understood. She represented dozens of talented employees whose careers had stalled simply because they didn't fit someone's narrow vision of success. While reviewing company files with his newfound access, he discovered a pattern of dismissed complaints and overlooked incidents. Qualified candidates had been passed over for promotions repeatedly. The previous quarter's budget revealed a shocking disparity in resource allocation between departments that couldn't be justified by business needs. One particularly revealing moment came during a departmental meeting. A junior employee suggested an innovative social media strategy, and several managers immediately began talking over him. The room fell silent when the owner raised his hand. "Please continue," he said to the junior employee. "I'd like to hear more about this idea." The looks on the managers' faces were priceless. He spent his lunch breaks differently now. Instead of sitting alone, employees would cautiously approach his table, sharing stories of their experiences. A designer talked about having her concepts stolen by her supervisor. An analyst revealed how he'd been passed over for client presentations despite his expertise. Each story added another piece to the puzzle of what needed changing. The office gossip mill worked overtime. Some employees worried about mass layoffs, while others hoped for swift justice. He noticed small changes already taking place. People being more mindful of their words and actions. Junior staff members speaking up more in meetings. Managers thinking twice before dismissing ideas. Late one evening, as most people had gone home, he sat in his modest cubicle reviewing his notes. The evidence was overwhelming. Systemic discrimination, favoritism, suppression of talent, and a toxic hierarchy that valued appearance over ability. But he wasn't interested in revenge. His goal was transformation. He watched as the cleaning staff came through, paying special attention to how others treated them. The same patterns of disrespect he'd experienced were part of their daily reality. One cleaner looked surprised when he helped pick up some papers that had fallen from a desk, a simple gesture that should have been normal, not exceptional. As he packed up his things that night, he thought about all the changes needed to make this workplace truly inclusive and merit-based. It wasn't just about removing a few bad managers. It was about rebuilding the entire company culture from the ground up. The regional head's behavior wasn't the disease. It was just a symptom of a much deeper problem. Looking out over the city lights, he began drafting his plan. Tomorrow would mark the beginning of real change, and he wanted to ensure every single person in this building understood that talent, hard work, and character were the only things that would matter going forward. The morning started with an unexpected announcement. A major new client project had just landed, one that could transform the company's reputation in the digital marketing space. Everyone gathered in the main conference room, excitement buzzing through the air as they waited to hear who would lead the project. He sat quietly in the back, watching as the regional head, now returned from her personal time, took control of the meeting. She had been unusually subdued since the incident, but today her confidence seemed restored as she stood at the front of the room, smiling at her favorite team members. "This project requires our absolute best," she announced, pacing the room. "We need someone with fresh perspectives, someone who represents our company's image properly." Her eyes skimmed past several highly qualified employees, lingering instead on a recent hire, a young man with minimal experience, but the right connections and the right look. That's when he decided to speak up. Rising from his chair, he cleared his throat. "I'd like to suggest an alternative," he said calmly. Everyone turned to look at him, the room growing tense. The senior digital strategist in the corner has 6 years of experience in exactly this type of campaign. The regional head's smile tightened. "I don't think you understand how we do things here," she said, her voice dripping with barely concealed anger. "We have a certain way of selecting project leads, and—" "Yes," he interrupted quietly. "I've noticed your way of selecting people. I've documented it quite thoroughly over the past few weeks." He pulled out a folder containing printed emails, meeting notes, and performance reviews that told a clear story of systematic discrimination. The regional head's face flushed red. "How dare you question my decisions?" she snapped, forgetting herself for a moment. "You may be who you are, but I've built this department from the ground up. I know what's best for this company." The room fell silent as she realized her mistake. Several employees shifted uncomfortably in their seats, while others stared at their notebooks, avoiding eye contact. But he remained standing, calm and composed. "Let's talk about what's best for the company," he said, opening the folder. "Let's discuss how the most qualified candidate for the last 3 projects was passed over, or how client feedback gets filtered based on who presents it. Or perhaps we should review the complaints that mysteriously disappeared from HR files." The regional head's composure cracked completely. "You can't come in here and undermine everything I've built," she shouted, her voice echoing off the conference room windows. "These people need a firm hand. They need proper guidance. They need a leader who respects them," he cut in, his voice still quiet but carrying authority that silenced her instantly. They need opportunities based on merit, not appearance. They need an environment where good ideas are heard, no matter who presents them. Looking around the room, he could see hope dawning on some faces, while others showed fear of the coming changes. The young man who had almost been handed the project looked embarrassed, finally understanding he hadn't earned the opportunity. This project, he continued, addressing the whole room now, will be assigned based on experience, skill, and proven ability. Nothing else. And moving forward, that's how everything in this office will work. The regional head grabbed her designer bag and stormed toward the door, but his words stopped her. "I expect you in my office in an hour," he said firmly. "We need to discuss your future with this company, or rather, the lack thereof." As she left, the room remained silent for a moment before erupting in whispered conversations. He walked over to the senior digital strategist who had been repeatedly overlooked. "Would you please share your ideas for this campaign? I believe everyone needs to hear them." The change in the room was palpable. People sat up straighter, pulled out notebooks, and actually listened. For the first time in many of their careers, they were seeing what a true meritocracy looked like. The transformation had begun. Over the next week, the office transformed into a quiet hub of focused activity. The owner worked late into the evenings, carefully reviewing years of company records, employee evaluations, and overlooked complaints. His simple desk became a command center of sorts, covered with folders and sticky notes mapping out the changes to come. He started by meeting privately with the company's legal team. The corporate lawyers arrived without fanfare, looking like any other visitors in their business suits. But their presence sent ripples of anxiety through the office. Everyone knew something big was coming, but nobody knew exactly what. The quiet woman from accounting stopped by his desk one evening, carrying a thick folder. "I've been keeping records," she said softly, "of everything I've seen over the past 5 years." Inside were detailed notes of incidents, dates, and patterns that matched perfectly with his own observations. She wasn't the only one. Other employees began coming forward with their own documented experiences. He noticed how the regional head's closest allies were suddenly updating their resumes and taking long lunch breaks. Word had gotten around about her upcoming departure, and the old power structure was crumbling. Some managers tried desperately to rewrite history, claiming they had always supported equality in the workplace. During a coffee break, he overheard 2 junior designers discussing their hopes for the future. "Maybe now our ideas will actually matter," one said. "I've been sitting on some concepts for months, too scared to share them." The other nodded in agreement, adding, "I just want a fair chance to prove what I can do." The building's security cameras had captured countless incidents of discrimination and favoritism. He spent hours reviewing footage with the IT team, documenting every instance where employees were treated differently based on their appearance or background. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. He arranged for a professional workplace culture consultant to evaluate the office environment. The consultant moved through the space like a ghost, observing interactions and taking notes. Their preliminary report confirmed everything. The company's problems weren't just about a few bad managers. The entire system needed rebuilding. Late one night, as he reviewed employee files, he found something interesting. The company's most successful projects, the ones that brought in the biggest clients, had come from teams with diverse backgrounds and perspectives. Yet somehow, these same team members had been repeatedly passed over for promotions and recognition. The next morning, he called a meeting with HR to discuss new hiring and promotion policies. The department head seemed nervous, probably remembering all the complaints they'd ignored over the years. But instead of accusations, he focused on the future. "We're going to build something better," he explained, "and we need your help to do it right." He drafted a new company charter, emphasizing merit-based advancement and zero tolerance for discrimination. Every word was carefully chosen to ensure there could be no misinterpretation, no loopholes for old habits to slip through. The legal team reviewed it line by line, making it bulletproof. Throughout the week, he noticed small changes already taking place. People from different departments started eating lunch together. Junior employees spoke up more in meetings. The cleaning staff began receiving genuine good mornings instead of being ignored. Hope was replacing fear. As Friday approached, he prepared for the company-wide meeting that would change everything. The presentation had to be perfect, clear enough for everyone to understand, firm enough to show he meant business, but encouraging enough to bring people together. This wasn't about punishment. It was about transformation. Looking out over the city lights that evening, he felt ready. The old system was about to end, and something new would take its place. He had all the evidence, all the support, and most importantly, all the right reasons to make these changes. Monday morning would mark the beginning of a new era for everyone in the building. Monday morning arrived with an unusual buzz in the office. The company-wide meeting had been scheduled for 9 a.m. sharp, and by 8:30, the main conference room was already filling up. People whispered among themselves, wondering what big changes were coming. The regional head stood at the front of the room, preparing to give her monthly presentation of company culture and diversity initiatives. The irony wasn't lost on anyone who had witnessed her behavior over the years. She shuffled her papers nervously, clearly aware that something was different about today's meeting. As we can all see from these charts, she began, pointing to a colorful slideshow. Our company has made great strides in creating an inclusive workplace environment. Her voice carried that familiar fake sweetness, but now it seemed hollow, especially to those who had suffered under her leadership. He waited quietly at the back of the room, watching as she continued her presentation. Our commitment to equality is unwavering, she declared, just as she had done every month for years. Everyone here has equal opportunities to succeed. Really? He asked, his voice carrying clearly across the room. Should we review those opportunities? He stood up, and the room fell silent. Walking slowly toward the front, he pulled out his phone and opened a video file. The projection screen suddenly switched from her cheerful charts to security camera footage. There she was, just weeks ago, berating a highly qualified employee for daring to speak up in a meeting. Another clip showed her dismissing outstanding project proposals without even reading them, based solely on who submitted them. Let's talk about equal opportunities, he continued, his voice calm but firm. Let's discuss why some of our most talented team members have been stuck in entry-level positions for years, while others have been fast-tracked based on their appearances or connections. The regional head's face paled. I can explain, she stammered, but he held up his hand. No need to explain. The evidence speaks for itself. He turned to address the room. For those who don't know me well, which is most of you, I'm the owner of this company. I've spent the last few weeks working alongside you, experiencing firsthand how this office really operates. Gasps and whispers filled the room. Some people looked shocked, others relieved, and a few seemed worried about what might come next. I've seen incredible talent being wasted, he continued. I've witnessed brilliant ideas being ignored. I've watched hard-working people being passed over time and time again. He paused, making eye contact with various employees who had shared their stories with him. That ends today. The regional head tried to gather her things and slip away, but he wasn't finished. Please stay, he said firmly. You should hear this too. Your position has been terminated, effective immediately. The HR team is waiting in your office to assist with your departure. As security arrived to escort her out, he turned back to the employees. Starting today, every person in this company will be judged solely on their merit, their work ethic, and their character. Nothing else matters. He clicked to the next slide, revealing the new company structure. These promotions are based on proven ability and documented performance. Some of you may be surprised to find your names here. Don't be. You earned these positions long ago. They're just finally being given to you now. The room erupted in a mixture of applause, tears, and stunned silence as people processed what was happening. Years of pent-up frustration and hidden talent were finally being acknowledged. "This is just the beginning," he assured them. "We're going to rebuild this company's culture from the ground up, and we're going to do it together. Every voice will be heard, every idea will be considered, and every person will have a genuine chance to succeed." The days following the big revelation brought waves of change throughout the office. Empty desks marked the departure of those who had abused their power, while newly promoted employees settled into their well-deserved positions. The atmosphere felt lighter, as if everyone could finally breathe freely. The quiet woman from accounting, now the new head of financial operations, led her first department meeting with a mix of confidence and humility. "I've waited 5 years to share these ideas," she began, spreading out detailed plans for improving the company's financial efficiency. Her team listened intently, taking notes and offering suggestions without fear of judgment. The owner kept his simple desk, refusing to move to the fancy corner office that had belonged to the regional head. "Leadership isn't about having the best view," he explained to a curious employee. "It's about staying connected to your team." He turned the executive suite into a collaborative workspace where anyone could book time to work on projects. In the break room, the old seating hierarchy disappeared. Senior managers sat with junior staff, sharing lunch and ideas. The previously ignored maintenance worker who had brilliant marketing insights now led creative brainstorming sessions. His years of observing customer behavior while cleaning the lobby had given him unique perspectives that nobody had bothered to hear before. The company's client meetings transformed too. Instead of having only certain people present, teams were now chosen based on who had the best ideas and experience for each project. Clients noticed the difference immediately, commenting on the fresh approaches and innovative solutions being presented. One morning, a delivery team arrived with new office furniture. But instead of going to the executive floor, it was distributed throughout the building. "Everyone deserves a comfortable place to work," the owner announced. The old hierarchy of furniture quality that had silently reinforced status differences was replaced with ergonomic chairs and well-equipped workstations for all. The IT department buzzed with activity as outdated computers were replaced. The previously ignored tech suggestions from junior staff were finally implemented, dramatically improving workflow efficiency. "We should have done this years ago," the new IT director admitted, "but nobody would listen to us back then." In the creative department, walls came down, literally. The old setup that had hidden junior designers in dark corners was replaced with an open layout where people could collaborate freely. The once quiet space now hummed with energy as team members shared ideas across departments and experience levels. The security guards and cleaning staff received new uniforms and were invited to company meetings. "They see everything that happens in this building," the owner explained. "Their insights are invaluable." Their suggestions about building operations and customer service patterns led to several innovative improvements. A young employee who had been repeatedly dismissed in the past presented a revolutionary social media strategy. As she concluded her presentation, the room burst into applause. "6 months ago, I would have been too scared to share this," she admitted, tears in her eyes. "Now I feel like my ideas actually matter." The transformation wasn't without challenges. Some long-term employees struggled to adapt to the new merit-based system, having grown comfortable with the old ways. But the owner's consistent example of humble leadership and fair treatment gradually won over even the most resistant team members. Friday afternoon meetings became known as open forum, where anyone could share ideas or raise concerns. During one such session, a maintenance worker's suggestion about improving client welcome procedures was immediately approved. The look of pride on his face as his idea was acknowledged spoke volumes about the changing culture. Looking around the office that had changed so much in just a few weeks, the owner smiled at the sight of people genuinely enjoying their work. The nervous glances and forced smiles of the past had been replaced with authentic enthusiasm and collaboration. This was what a real workplace should look like, where every person's potential could flourish, regardless of their position or background. 6 months had passed since the day everything changed. The marketing firm had become almost unrecognizable, in the best possible way. The story of its transformation had spread through the business world, featured in major business magazines and industry blogs as a case study in workplace culture change. The once dreaded Monday mornings now buzzed with energy. People arrived early, not from fear of punishment, but excited to work on projects they believed in. The office lobby, once cold and intimidating, now displayed a wall of employee achievements. Not just sales records, but instances of teamwork, innovation, and community impact. A film crew from a business news channel visited to document the company's remarkable turnaround. They interviewed employees at all levels, capturing stories of positive change. The quiet woman, who now led the finance department, spoke confidently about doubling the company's efficiency. "We didn't just change policies," she explained. "We changed lives." The maintenance worker, whose marketing insights had been ignored for years, now ran one of the most successful campaign teams. His unique perspective on customer behavior, gained from years of observing people in the lobby, had led to breakthrough strategies that attracted major new clients. The owner still kept his modest desk, though now it sat in an open office space where anyone could walk up and share ideas. He made a point of eating lunch in the break room, joining different groups each day. "The best suggestions," he often said, "come from unexpected places." Client meetings had become dynamic sessions where everyone contributed. Gone were the days of predetermined presenters based on appearance. Now, the best ideas led, regardless of who suggested them. The company's reputation grew, not just for its creative work, but for its inclusive approach to business. The old regional head's diversity initiatives binder, found gathering dust in a cabinet, served as a reminder of how hollow words could be without real action. In its place stood real changes: blind hiring practices, merit-based promotions, and mentorship programs that actually worked. One morning, a young intern rushed excitedly into the office. The company had just won a prestigious industry award, not for its marketing campaigns, but for its revolutionary workplace culture. The celebration that followed included everyone, from the newest hire to the longest-serving maintenance staff. The building's security team, now fully integrated into company operations, had implemented innovative visitor protocols based on their years of experience. Before, nobody asked our opinion. The head of security shared. Now, our ideas help shape how this company welcomes people. Professional development wasn't just a buzzword anymore. Employees at all levels were encouraged to learn and grow. The company sponsored courses, workshops, and certification programs. People who had been stuck in the same position for years were finally advancing based on their actual abilities. The transformation caught the attention of other businesses. Industry leaders began visiting to learn how they could replicate this success. The owner always told them the same thing: "It's simple. See people for their potential, not their appearance. Listen to every voice. Judge by merit alone." What surprised everyone most was the impact on the bottom line. Without the artificial barriers of the old system, talent flourished. Innovation soared. Client satisfaction reached record levels. The company's success proved that doing the right thing wasn't just morally correct, it was good business. Looking out over the office one evening, the owner reflected on how far they'd come. The designer whose ideas had been stolen now led creative direction for their biggest accounts. The analyst who'd been passed over countless times had revolutionized their data strategy. Every success story represented a person whose potential had finally been unleashed. "The best view in this office," he told a visiting reporter, "isn't the city skyline. It's watching people thrive when they're finally given the chance they always deserved." The story of this workplace transformation became more than just a business case study. It became a blueprint for change, proving that true leadership means creating space for everyone to succeed.